This presentation will cover the SAP concept of supply scenario. The use of the supply scenario is highly recommended by SAP for utility companies acting in a deregulated market. Let's start the presentation by introducing the concept of supply scenario. The supply scenario concept is used for deregulated markets. It belongs to the ISU Intercompany Data Exchange sub-module. The function of the supply scenario are used to define the appropriate data models for the supply situations to be supported by your system and automatically set these up or change them for a point of delivery. More concretely, it allows to create and allocate ISU master data to a point of delivery. In the meantime, move-in and/or move-out documents are generated according to the supply situation. With the supply scenario, no need anymore to go one by one in each SAP transaction to create or update the master data and the move-in or move-out documents. Nevertheless, SAP usual transactions are compatible with the supply scenario. Both can and should be used together. There is indeed few need to use the supply scenario if you want to update, for instance, one particular field of one master data. In order to use the supply scenario, you always need a deregulated point of delivery. The POD is the central object. More in detail, when you apply a supply scenario to a POD, you will be able to create or update and assign a contract account, installations, contracts, billable services, and non-billable services to a POD. This will in the meantime create move-in and/or move-out documents if needed. This depends on the configured supply scenario. Besides this, it is also possible to allocate service provider agreements and data exchange processes to a supply scenario. To apply a supply scenario and create or update the previously mentioned ISU objects as per standard in one single process, you have to create the business partner, the premise, and the service provider beforehand. Those objects are considered as prerequisites by SAP. Nevertheless, you can imagine to use the master data generator in order to incorporate the creation of those prerequisites in the supply scenario process. The concept of master data generator will be detailed in another presentation. Don't miss it, it's a powerful tool every SAP ISU consultant should know. This slide will be a recap of what has been explained previously, to make sure the concept is well understood. As mentioned, the central object is the POD. It's the object to which the supply scenario will be applied. As per standard SAP, some objects needs to be created beforehand. Those objects are the business partner, the premise, and the service providers. Once this has been done, it's time to assign the supply scenario to the POD. Supply scenarios should of course be configured beforehand. During the assignment of a supply scenario to a POD, SAP will perform all the standard consistency check as if you were using transaction by transaction to achieve the same result. If needed, SAP will raise an error in the log. The system will also analyze all the operations it has to do according to the selected supply situation. After the analysis, the system can perform the following actions depending on the master date model. Create a contract account if needed, create, change, or leave as is the existing installation, create, stop, shift the start date or cancel a contract, create, stop, shift the start date or cancel a non-billable service. All those actions are performed using the master data generator. The concept of supply scenario is little known while recommended by SAP since SAP Utilities 4.71 solution. So why is it not yet widely used? By experience, SAP concepts without transactions in the SAP menu are underused. In this case, no SAP transactions exist in the SAP menu. The supply scenario has to be approached via the Customer Interaction Center, as shown on the screenshot below. This ends the introduction to the supply scenario. We hope you enjoyed the first part. Let's now move to some examples of business scenarios in which the concept of supply scenario can be used. Let's have a look to the first use case, the initial creation of master data in the case of a single contract model. You can easily configure a supply scenario applicable in the case of a single contract model by using the SAP Customizing. The customizing object can be easily retrieved in IDE or Intercompany Data Exchange. If you apply a supply scenario to an initial POD that has been configured to fulfill the single contract model, one installation and one contract will be created. One or several non-billable services could be created as well according to your settings in the configuration of the supply scenario. In the illustrated model, one non-billable service should be created for the supply of energy and one non-billable service should be created for the settlement coordination. In the meantime, a move-in document will be created. Please note that a supply scenario is always division-specific. This case will be shown in the first demo. In the second use case related to the dual contract model where both supply and distribution of energy are managed in the same system, two installations and two billable contracts will be created when you apply the supply scenario, the initial POD as shown in the below illustration. One or several non-billable services could be created as well according to your settings in the configuration of the supply scenario. In the illustrated model, one non-billable service should be created for the settlement coordination. In the meantime, two move-in documents will be generated. This case will be shown in Demo 2. You can also apply a supply scenario to a POD for which a supply scenario has already been assigned if the standard consistency checks allow it. This will lead to updated master data and/or the creation of new move-in or move-out documents depending on the past and new supply situation. It will also create a new time slice. This allows to have a clear view on the past, present and future supply situation of a point of delivery. You can also shift a supply scenario. In other words, this process is used to move the start date of a contract or move-in document. This is our third use case. The fourth use case and the supply scenario is used to put an end date to a contract. It basically creates a move-out document. The fifth case is initially not foreseen by SAP, but you can easily get it thanks to some basic configuration. This scenario is used when you want to restart or continue an ended supply scenario. Use case 3, 4 and 5 will be shown in Demo 3. The last use case is intended to show the integration between the supply scenario concept and switch documents. It is initially not foreseen by SAP to update switch documents when using the supply scenarios, but it can be done thanks to some configuration. This last case will be shown in Demo 4, which is the last demo related to the supply scenario. This ends the list of examples that will be part of the demos. Everything you will see in the demos has been configured by functional consultants and is standard SAP. No developer has been used to build custom enhancements. After the theory, if you are still interested in this subject, please open the next videos in order to see some more practical examples. Thank you for your attention.